Hey guys, just wanted to do a quick fishing report update, best fishing spots, tips, and just a general report for the Pawleys Island area, along with Georgetown, Murrells Inlet, Surfside, and just all the surrounding beaches and everything around that area. It's all going to be pretty much the same. So we haven't been having a ton of luck out in the surf. Uh, the past couple weeks before that, I mean, I had friends, sending me pictures of big bull red drum they were catching, which, it's not all year long that you can do that in the surf in these areas. It's just a very kind of like finite window. So they may come back. There may, with all the warm weather we've had this week and this weekend, maybe it kind of heats up and everything. But for just in general, when I'm out in the surf, obviously, if you want to throw some like store-bought shrimp, cup of shrimp, or just go to the store and just get some shrimp and throw those out there on a circle hook with a high-low or just really a fish finder rig, anything like that. You're probably going to have some luck and catch something. Even though I'll be honest with you, it's been slow even when it comes to that setup, which really shows how slow it has been. But another way to really quickly fish the surf this time of year and maybe get lucky with something that you normally wouldn't catch during certain days, certain times, and certain tides is to get yourself one of these gotcha plugs. It's not all year that I would use one of these, but this time of year with the water as clear as it is and just certain species still coming down from up north, and possibly coming in and coming by the beach, especially if you see a bait ball, you can throw one of these out there. I need to do some touch up on this one and my other one, but these are the two that I use here. And so I'll just hook those on with a nice long clear leader coming back to my braid, or I'll have like a full clear setup. This time of year, I do believe that makes a difference where you're not just like tying braid straight to this thing and throwing it out, even though it's sometimes a lot easier and quicker. And sometimes at certain parts of the year, it doesn't matter because the water's so murky out there. It's not going to make that big of a difference. But I always try to use a clear leader when it comes to this time of year and just in general. Now, when it comes to the creeks, we've been having a ton of luck. So not in the normal spots like all over the creeks either. It's actually kind of made it a lot easier for us. So we've been catching a ton of red drum and black drum, also a good amount of speckled sea trout, and some flounder as well. So really where we're focused, and this is kind of like a general tip in terms of where to catch red drum and black drum this time of year. They're not going to be huge. But they should be slot or right around it, give or take. So you should be able to take these fish home and eat them, and hopefully you do. So they're very, very good. We had a big old fish fry about a week ago, and man, I'm still thinking about that. It was so good. Caught a ton of black drum and red drum. So where we're focused right now is in the creek mouths. So when it comes to a creek system like this, typically what you're going to see, just a general rule of thumb, is when the tide comes in, the fish are going to go all up in the kind of arms of these creeks, right? And they're going to get as high as possible because they're going to be able to get all the fiddler crabs and all the random things that are up in the marsh system that are normally not accessible except during a high tide, right? And then when the tide starts coming out, they're going to flush out with the bait, and they're probably going to school up in an area like this. So high tide, they're going to be way up in here. And really, I mean, I will go out and fish high tide, and this time of year, you actually, from my experience, will have a lot of luck fishing high tide, but in the same spots you would fish a low tide. So I don't usually chase the fish all up in the creek system during a high tide. I just feel like the numbers go down in terms of like where they could be. I mean, they really could be anywhere. You know where they are. They're up in the grass, and I don't know. I would rather just go cruise around for a little bit or just hang out and then time the tide better. So what I'm really looking for is either a outflow of tide, so it's almost low tide and it's the tide is coming out, or my favorite time is when it's a slack tide, slack low tide, and the tide is rolling over and it's starting to come back in. From my experience, that's when I have a ton of luck just crushing large numbers of red drum, black drum, and trout and flounder. So where I like to go is right here at a mouth. And I love to find mouths that have a ledge that drops off, or a hole that you just have discovered, or just kind of figure, there's probably a hole right there. Now, when it comes to flounder, I'll fish more of the banks around that area. So I'm actually looking for the opposite of a hole. I'm looking for like a sandbar right next to the hole. And during low tide, it's cool if you actually go to a sandbar that's near a creek mouth or near a hole, and look at it at low tide. Sometimes you can actually see the marks of a flounder sitting there on the sand. Like, there was a school of flounder, a big group of them, just sitting there during high tide. So they obviously had to move during low tide. They're probably in that hole next to it, or very close by. They don't really usually go far. But the cool thing is most likely if you come back at high tide or a higher tide, like when that tide's rolling back over that bar and gets, a foot, 2 foot of water on top of the bar, most likely the flounder are going to be there. So just come back and, throw out a jig head right on there with some cut bait or something like that. So coming back to this spot though, what I typically see happen is the fish will get flushed out and come down, and they don't want to go far. I mean, they know that they're going to get the goods when the tide comes back in, and they also know if they just sit out here in this hole, or to the sides of the hole, depending on the current, that all this bait is going to get flushed out to them. So it just makes perfect sense for them to just come out, kind of like hide behind something if there's some structure, and attack as it comes out. All the fish, shrimp, whatever it may be, getting flushed out. So that's where I go in and I say, yep, here's my shrimp, fish, or whatever bait I'm using, and I give it to them right there, and I catch a ton of fish right there. Usually right as the tide is rolling over from low slack tide to a incoming tide. So meaning it's going up, if that's the right way to say it. So what I was using this past week was a typical, this is the Battle 3, just using this. I usually use a Battle 3 or a Spinfisher 6. Those are my two rod reel setups that I use, and typically just the standard pole that comes with the combo. Nothing fancy here, okay? And what I've got is, this is like a size maybe 2 or 3, probably a size 2 or 2/0, I should say, circle hook, okay? And let's try to get it to where you can actually see it. There you go. And it's tied onto fluorocarbon leader. I think this is maybe 12-pound fluorocarbon leader, okay? And it might be a little hard to see, but I like to use really long leaders. Now, you got to learn how to cast a really long leader with one of these. It's like a load up, like real long, loaded up, and then sling it, not any whipping. Whip with a long leader, it's going to get nasty for you. But what I have after the leader, so again, let me hold it out. I'll tell you about how long it is. How good. I got the hook stuck in my shoe here. There you go. Yep. So I don't know. That's about a 3-foot leader, 2.5-foot leader, something like that. Coming back to just a little swivel here and set up. And I like to go as small as I can on the swivels, but when you start using beads, if they have larger holes, then you can't go too small on the swivel, right? And even here, it'll get caught on your knot sometimes and stuff. But I like to go swivel, bead, egg weight, bead. And man, I've tried no beads with beads, but here's the thing is my favorite thing to do with a Carolina rig is to get it out there and then just slowly drag it across the bottom. You got to be careful. You got to know how to fish it because you don't want to drag it and then get it hooked on an oyster. So if you feel resistance that's not fighting back and pulling drag or anything like that, then you're probably hooked on an oyster, and you want to go from dragging to hopping, okay, until you get out of that. But if you get lucky, you'll find a spot that has structure on the bottom, so either like little rocks or shells or even oysters that you're not going to get caught on, and be able to drag that setup right there over those. And when you do, you hear that, it's going to sound like shrimp popping, okay? Or it's at least going to attract the fish over to the area because they're going to hear something and wonder what it is, okay? And that's when you've got this long leader way back here that they have no clue is there, and you're basically dragging your bait across the bottom, okay? And you can use artificial bait all you want, and I use artificial bait a lot as well, but I can tell you right now that my odds of catching fish on this setup with a shrimp from a cup, okay, or shrimp from the store, or preferably some fresh cut mullet that I've caught with my cast net and then cut up, and I like to fillet them. You can chunk them, or you can even take the chunks and then fillet it and like butterfly it. That right there catches way more fish for me. Catch them all day long on it, and it just seems, it seems a little bit more productive for me. So it's higher maintenance, right, than artificial bait. But anyways, you catch more fish. So anyways, when you're dragging that over there and it's making that noise, and then let's say you have a shrimp on the end, then, it's natural. They're wondering what that is. Kind of sounds like a shrimp. They see the shrimp getting dragged across the bottom. Boom. And you get them. And then so once I go past the swivel, I actually keep the clear fluorocarbon going. A lot of people will do braid right there, but I like to have a little bit more invisibility. Just trying to drag it out to my knot here and see if I can get it out here to show you guys. So I will keep the clear fluorocarbon going. There's my swivel coming all the way out here. And then you can either do like a double uni, FG knot, or Alberto. This one's probably needs to be retied. It's pretty frayed. But right there, that gives you the ability to still be able to cast this thing through your little eyelets there on your rod and not get all hung up. But that's also why it's frayed, and every once in a while you need to retie it just to make sure. But that thing's strong, man. I know that they do test online of like what the strongest knot is for like braid to fluoro, braid to mono, and the FG always wins. But I never tie it because I think it's a pain to tie, and I've never once, knock on wood, had one of my knots break off. Yeah, the Alberto works just fine. So anyways, guys, that's what I've been doing. I've been crushing black drum, red drum, flounder, trout, whatever I want out there, using that exact same tactic. And most of these spots, I like to walk down trails. Be careful with the gators. They're probably not very active this time of year, but snakes, gators, all that stuff are down there. Be careful. But, walk down a trail if there's one that exists and find yourself a little hole and fish it and eat good tonight. All right, guys, good luck.